Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's 12:33 and calling to order the meeting of the Transportation Advisory Board of the Metropolitan Council. It is July 16th, 2025, and we've got some things we've got to go over here early on in the meeting. Charlie Zelli, in his capacity as the chair of the Met Council and a member of the Governor's Cabinet, they have a role, including the council, in setting the tone for the region when it comes to tribal and American Indian relations. Last year, the council established an American Indian Advisory Council as part of the development of the region's development guide, Imagine 2050. The Advisory Council includes highly respected leaders of the American Indian community in this region, members representing Dakota, Ojibwe, Ho-Chunk, and Lakota communities, and range from youth activities to community elders, and they continue to meet. Through the AIAC feedback, the council work focused on land acknowledgement transformed into land, water, and people commitments of the Met Council. The council adopted procedures in March for use of the acknowledgement of these commitments. And so what does that mean for TAB and its committees? We'll start with an organic approach. It's helpful to approach this work organically, starting by reading the acknowledgement at today's TAB meeting, and I'll read that after our fellow colleague Deb Barber goes through a few things that were involved with the council's decision. So we plan to have more discussion at the August TAB Executive Committee meeting about how we use these talking points and this acknowledgement. Do we read it every meeting? Do we read it periodically during the year? We'll discuss that, and the TAB itself will make a decision on that. And then as to the Met Council's process, I'm going to turn it now over to Councilmember Barber to tell us anything that she wishes to share with us today. And then I will read the Dakota Land, Water, and People Acknowledgement.
Very good.
Member Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of quick things. First, I want to introduce our tribal liaison, who is very integral in all of this. Allison Wackoff, can you please stand up? Say hi. So she's here, and she's very knowledgeable in this space and has been a great asset to the council. Anytime we're doing things regarding our relationships with the tribal nation, she's participating, but also in really a lot of this grounding work that we did behind the land, water, and people acknowledgement. So thank you for your help, and like I said, you ever need some expertise or somebody to talk to, Allison's happy to help. This work that we're doing is really, I can tell you just on a personal note, was really important to me. My district is the only district that has a sovereign nation within it, just the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux community. Even from the time I first came on council, it was really important to start building those relationships, and continue that really to this day. And then one of the other things is our region is home to one of the largest urban American Indian populations in the country. And amongst those people are my husband, who is a tribal member, and my children, who are descendants. And so, to see this work and to see it actually put into action here is really important. And I think the way that we're doing it is very different. We really wanted it not to be just a statement that's read and just something that's more performative, but we've tied it to commitments to the Native population and tribal nations, where we're working on land, water, and people, and how it really becomes part of our daily work. And that's a really unique way that we're doing it. I think, we've worked really closely with the tribal nations in our region to do this, and I think it's really critical work, and I'm really glad that we're going to adopt some of that at TAB. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Member Barber. So here is the Dakota Land, Water, and People Acknowledgement that has been crafted with the assistance of the Metropolitan Council, and I'm sure input from our tribal members. And it reads as follows. The Metropolitan Council acknowledges that the land we currently call Minnesota, and specifically the seven-county region, is the ancestral homeland of the Dakota Oyate, who are present and active contributors to our thriving region. As part of the Metropolitan Council's commitment to address the unresolved legacy of genocide, dispossession, and settler colonialism, and the fact that governmental institutions, including the Metropolitan Council, benefited economically, politically, and institutionally after the forcible removal of the Dakota Oyate, the Metropolitan Council is dedicated to instilling land, water, and people commitments in regional policy. These commitments support the Dakota Oyate, the 11 federally recognized tribes in Minnesota, the Ho-Chunk Nation, and the American Indian communities representing over 150 diverse tribal nations that call the 7-county metro region home. Having provided that acknowledgement, the next thing we'll do is move on to the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Anderson.
Is there a second? All right. We got a motion and a second by the Commissioner Cattell to approve the agenda. Any further discussion with respect to the agenda? All those in favor of adopting the agenda for today's meeting say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Do we have members of the public that would wish to address the tab on a matter of concern to them? Okay. Your guest that you had with you today, Member Barber, would she like to come up and speak at all to the tab about anything that is relevant to the acknowledgement? We'd certainly welcome your comments if you'd want to come forward and just introduce yourself again, and eager to hear what you have to say about all this work that's been done with respect to the acknowledgement.
Oh, I appreciate that. Allison Waka, I'm a Menominee and Navajo. My clans are Tatanasani and Owasso, and I'm the Tribal Liaison and Native Relations Coordinator here at Met Council. And I come from Hennepin County. I was there for many years as their community liaison, and I love to continue. I started land acknowledgement work there, and really happy to see it was organically happening already when I started, and so it's been really nice to see that work internally happening, and I'm here to support it. So yeah, it's been an amazing journey, and this will be it's going to be reviewed annually, biannually, and so the commitments will be updated. And right now, housing has been doing an amazing job, parks as well, and so each has their commitments to the division. And yeah, it's just been going really, really well. So next up is hopefully some training components. So
Okay.
yeah, it's really
Ms. Wacko,
exciting.
you might be of some guidance to us as we think about at our next meeting how frequently to read the acknowledgement. You know, I know that there's some discussion at the council about reading it every 6 months,
Right.
but certainly willing to have your input on it as for guidance purposes.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. I'd be happy to help.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Anyone else wish to address the tab on a matter of concern to them? Okay. We'll move on then to the reports section of the agenda, and the policymaker work group met for a couple of hours here this morning. We're getting some really great guidance from our staff, from Steve Peterson, and where's Molly? Is she here? Still here? She take off? Just in framing up the work that we do from meeting to meeting and getting us prepared for the next meeting. So in this particular policy working group session, there was discussion about ABRT and its future needs. We heard about the fact that the 7 categories: safety, bike ped, transit, roadway, climate, GHG, EV, TDM, and then a new category called community considerations. You know, what the federal government's saying, no, you can't have DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs associated with any federal funding. So there's a new category that's been created called community considerations. I know down at Hennepin County they call it disparity reduction. But we'll do the work that we all think is important to do around equity and inclusion. And if we have to hang a different title on it, we'll do that. But we're going to continue to do the work we need to do. So those 7 categories, over 100 participants were divided up into 7 working groups with each of those categories. And the focus of their work was around scoring criteria, measures, and then funding levels. And so we talked a little bit about the activity that they had engaged in. And then we discussed a new category proposed new category called interchanges, those projects that have real significant regional implications, and whether or not that category warranted dedicated funding, much like ABRT. And incidentally, on ABRT, we talked about with escalating costs and inflation, should we be moving that ABRT commitment that we've had at the tab level from 25 million to 35 million, which is a suggestion of the Met Council. And then back to the interchanges project, because those are so expensive to do, there's a discussion there about funding those with dedicated funding, one project per year at the $20 million level. And we'll be back to you in December with more information on that. And all of those interchange projects are encompassed within the Met Council MnDOT interchange study. And those projects that seem like they're more ready than others would be competing against each other for this potential dedicated funding. Then we also discussed briefly some funding minimums and maximums. There's a technical review committee of about 20 people that's looking at our existing cycle on funding and mechanisms for that. They've added inflation and they've added increased construction costs and come up with some recommendations on new funding minimums and maximums, and we'll be talking with the full tab about that in December as well. So those are the main, and then we talked a little bit about geographic balance and our historic work around geographic balance at the end of the work we do on the regional solicitation. And so we'll be discussing that with you as we get deeper into that as well. We've got some more meetings. We've got some scheduled through the fall. And then, as I said, we'll be back in front of the tab in December with some recommendations, December 17th meeting of the tab. So that concludes my report with respect to the work of the policymaker work group. And then I'm going to turn now to Connie Sahibjam for his report from MnDOT.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, members. As always, I'll start with some safety numbers. Unfortunately, fatalities and injuries and incidents continue to happen on our system. First, I'll talk about a couple of statewide numbers, not just Metro, but the whole state. We've had, up until yesterday, 177 fatalities. That actually compares to last year, this time was 227, exactly 50 less, which is great. Last year, the whole year, we had 477, which has always been the case. We're hover around the 400 number, plus or minus. But if it continues this way, we will be 370, which is about 100 less than if you interpolate and extrapolate beyond the data. So that is, I would say, interim success. I mean, our success will be when we get to zero, which we're still working toward. And we'll have to figure out why that is. Why is it that there's 100 less, which I really am interested in. Then if you dive down into Metro, it's been a rough month of June. We've had 16 fatalities in the Metro area. That includes all seven counties. 3 motorcycles, and that's like a third of all the motorcycle accidents in Metro happened this month, third in the Metro district. So I don't know. I'm sure you've seen motorcycles go. Some are more careful than others. And I was thinking about going back to my youth because I used to have motorcycles when I was in college. And my wife suggested that if I wanted to let the air run through the holes in my head, get a convertible. So I listened to her, like always. So I decided not to. But it's different. I went to school in South Dakota. You're out on the county road, out in the country. That's different than riding on 494, I-94, or wherever it is. So in the other number in the Metro District, we're about 40% of the whole state as far as total fatalities. The 74 that we've had this year so far. Pedestrians, it's 14 of those 74 are pedestrians in Metro, and that is 88-90% of the state numbers, which I can kind of see. It was more highly populated, more dense. That can happen, which it's a good opportunity we were talking about road modernization at the policy meeting. To me, parts of road modernization is things like that, being able to avoid incidents like that with pedestrian bikes, rollers, in dense areas. And then motorcycles in Metro, like I said, we've had 9 all year, and that's about half of we've had statewide. Then I would like to make a little announcement about some funding, and this is freight funding. As you may know, Minnesota Highway Freight Program solicitation is going on right now. It started in June and ends September 3rd. It's a $51.2 million amount, and 25.6 will go to each year, 29 and 30. All cities, counties, ports, waterways, railroads, airports, tribal government, and MnDOT districts are encouraged to apply for these, and it benefits the freight movement, safety and intermodal connections and efficiency of freight movement. And that's obviously, it's recognized by the legislature too, where they fund some projects through the Corridors of Commerce program, and that's basically what that is. That's more highway focused, and this can be anything. There will be an interactive webinar, a Q&A on July 23rd at 1, and I think with that information, maybe we can have Jenna or Elaine maybe send it to everybody if folks want to tune in, if they want to apply for those funds. You have till September 3rd. And then my monthly apologies about all the construction disruptions going on. It's usually my job is fun and I enjoy it, but it's amazingly been a lot more intense than previous years. This is not the first year you do construction, and we were talking about system maintenance earlier in the policy group, and that's exactly what we're doing, fixing a lot of our assets, our pavements. So the big one on 94, the bridge, Dartmouth Bridge, and a couple of other bridges, that is almost done. Well, I should say August 15th is when it's done. And the goal there was to get it done before the state fair. And occasionally we, take care of bridges. Whenever we do overhead work, we close the freeway, 94. Some weekends you've noticed that. We've been banging heads with the Minnesota Vikings for August 16th. I think there's a preseason game, and we are closed. That's our last weekend that we have to close. And they were pushing hard through the governor's office, and I think we're going to accommodate it somehow, but it'll be difficult to completely to not close it. Another big one close to downtown is the 394. That starts end of this month, where the easy pass lanes will be closed. So we've maintained the bridges and highway on that stretch of it. And then next year will be the eastbound and the westbound. So that'll be more of an impact then. And you hear later about the easy pass lane, and that's been getting a lot of attention in the media as well. People are worried about what's going to happen with that. I've had a lot of engagement with local businesses in downtown through Downtown Council, Adam Dunnick's group, and meeting with businesses there. Encouraging private sector can help and be part of this. Ever since we've started to work from home because of COVID, we see that we can do it, and people can be flexible. We encourage companies to allow people to be flexible. Don't force everybody to be at their desk at 8 o'clock in the morning, or everybody work Tuesday to Thursday, because that's when most people go to work. They like to take Monday and Friday off. So try to spread it out and encourage that, because come 5, and everybody wants to leave at 5 o'clock, leave downtown. You're not going to be able to leave for a while. So that's going westbound. So anyway, that's about all. And then the other part, I was talking to a member, Foster, earlier about the road buckles. That's been it's not a new phenomenon, but it's been a lot more compared to the past this year. And I would say weather patterns probably has a lot to do with it, and that is because what they're telling me, that my pavement guys say, we've always had expansion when it's really hot. You know, it might be 2 or 3 when we get above in the high 90s. But this year, when you get a lot of rain before the heat, and the water gets in through the joints, and then it parks there, and then when it gets really hot, with the warm temperature and the humidity index, heat index, it gets really hot in there, and then the water basically bubbles up, and we have videos, maybe sometime people like to see these things, maintenance type videos. You can see it develop within 2 minutes. It pops up. I actually drove over one down in Eden Prairie where I live, one that had just happened, and there's nobody there and our guys, I got to give them a lot of credit. They're constantly fighting these, they're like firefighters fighting brush fires. Yesterday, a whole bunch happened up on 35. Our Forest Lake folks get out there. So anyway, I'll cut it short, Mr. Chair. I won't say any more. Maybe I'll have an opportunity to introduce the topic later when we talk Easy Pass.
We've got some questions, I think. Member Ho.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, excuse me.
Thank you for your report, Connie. Speaking about motorcycles, I was curious if there are any current efforts or planned or current at MINDA to track and compare the motorcycle crashes following implementation of the motorcycle lane filtering law.
The law that
allows them to, yeah.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I don't know that we have, but I would suggest we do that because I was surprised the other day. One goes by really fast, and part of it is us getting used to it, that this is in Minnesota. Many parts of the world, they do that. It's okay, or parts of the country. Here, it's kind of new, and people need to watch for them. And I think motorcycles sometimes feel safe that everybody is seeing them, but they may not. So, yeah, all it takes is, and people are being distracted on phones. You see it all the time. People weave back and forth, and it's all it takes to clip a motorcycle. So I think that's a good point, and I'll take it back to our safety folks.
Member Doe, any follow-on?
Oh, that's
Okay.
it.
All right.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I noticed that too. I expect the fatality rate will go up because of that. Quick question for you. Anybody else have a question or comment? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representing the area where the 394 changes are being done, is there any change to the design plan, or is it just maintenance of the way that it is
The 394,
heading into downtown Minneapolis from the west?
Mr. Chair, there is no design change. This is basically just taking care of the bridges, the joints. It's about 30 years old, and a lot of rust and broken up concrete. So it's basically maintenance and preservation.
Okay.
So no additional capacity. I don't know if that's what you want, or?
Yeah, I wonder if there are any new exits planned
No.
or any widening of exits or changes to the exits along
That-
that area.
Mr. Chair, that area is so complex. If you wanted to add anything, it impacts so many things. Someday, maybe it could be a topic to talk about, the whole elbow conversation. When I was meeting with the downtown businesses, that's one big piece of infrastructure that we have that we shy away from because it is so big and difficult to deal with, trying to figure out who wants it, what are the desires of the people that live there? What do they want it to be? And so look at that whole thing, businesses, the city, county, and then state has some regional roles. People drive through there from Wayzata to St. Paul, so we got to somehow get them through. So it's a complex, huge, multi-billion-dollar project.
Yeah.
The Metro District has only $350 million a year. That doesn't go very far.
I can just say from the residents that I represent there, Bryn Mawr neighborhood in particular is very cut off by 94 and 394. So it's cut off from downtown, it's cut off from the lakes, it's cut off from Loring Park, and there's just very few ways to get in and out of Bryn Mawr.
Yeah.
Every closure that happens there makes it so hard to get in and out of the neighborhood. So that would be my priority for future planning, is just making more access to that neighborhood.
And we, Mr. Chair, we work with Bryn Mawr very closely. I've been to the neighborhood to the evening meetings. They had some nice appetizers. They were really nice to us, and we met with them about some trail projects that we were actually doing close by. They had some concerns, so yeah, we have folks that are directly connected and work with the Bryn Mawr neighborhood.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thanks, Member Cashman. Anyone else? Connie, today I had the privilege of coming from Medina here and coming up 35W and then getting to drive all the way to Roseville to go across to 36 and back 35E because of the closure. I couldn't get on 94 off 35W. So
Yes.
how long is that going to be?
August 15th, Mr. Chair.
August 15th? Okay. All right. I think next time I come over here, I'm going to use an alternate route.
You won't believe how much I've been on our own people about that specific exit, that's the signage. They didn't have signage until about a week ago. So there's signs that says East 94, East 94, you go around the corner,
And it's
quarter mile East 94, boom, it's bare.
I know.
My new route will be 62 to 35E. I think
Yeah,
that'll be the
that,
new
well,
route.
that or, yeah. We'll jump.
All right, thanks, Connie. Member Cashman, thanks for your comments on Bryn Mawr. That's a charming little neighborhood, but you want access in and out of there too.
Yeah.
Yes, as much as possible.
All right. Before I go to Member Kolash for an MPCA update, I wanted to just make an observation here that our colleague Mark Jenkins now he's now been promoted to the Met Council, if you want to call it a promotion. So he's leaving the tab and going to the Met Council. And Torrin Gustafson was the alternate who is now going to replace Mark Jenkins. And Torrin, welcome, Member Gustafson. Thanks for being here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, like you said, my name's Torrin Gustafson. I've always had a passion for transportation. My mom actually used to be an executive over at BNSF right across the way. So that's always been my background. I actually live in Maplewood on one of the proposed routes for the Purple Line, and I was also involved with Gold Line planning as I had been at 3M at the time. So kind of have my hands in various parts of the East Metro.
Yeah, welcome. Nice to have you here. And Commissioner Gamache, here for Commissioner Jepson. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you.
All right, good. Member Kolash.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Again, for introductions, my name is Frank Kolash. I'm Assistant Commissioner for Air and Climate Policy with the Pollution Control Agency. I will try to keep this update a little bit more upbeat than it was last month with the recitation of what was in the reconciliation bill. But to highlight, we continue to have the efforts to update Minnesota's climate action framework. It does include a transportation chapter that MnDOT is leading the review of, and Met Council is also involved in that update. That update will continue. We'll have another opportunity for stakeholder input in September as we aim for a late 2025 update to the climate action framework, understanding the changed circumstances that we are in, but also listing the long list of menu items across all of the various chapters in the emission sectors that we have in the state for climate action to reduce emissions, to increase resiliency in the state, and to ensure that equity is included in all of our climate policies as we move forward. For funding opportunities, the Pollution Control Agency has a freight switcher locomotive grant opportunity open. It is available for local governments. It is based on a sliding scale depending on what kind of fuel is sought for the replacement of older diesel switcher locomotives, up to 75% match for an electric switcher locomotive. So that is open until October 22nd of 2025 this year, and it is available for those who are operating the locomotive yards. So an opportunity to reduce significant diesel emissions from older diesel operated switcher locomotives that operate typically in communities. For our electric school bus grant, we are combining Volkswagen funding along with a federal grant under the Inflation Reduction Act that has been obligated. And so we do have, I was just told last week, we've ordered or some school districts have ordered 2 additional electric buses to be deployed in Minnesota, along with the further rollout of that. I think we'll have 9 total new electric buses in Minnesota from that grant. Some potential good news on the reconciliation law that was adopted by the Senate at the end of June and then by the House at the beginning of July and signed by the President on July 4th. The Senate removed the repeal of the light-duty, medium-duty vehicle emission standards and the heavy-duty vehicle emission standards from the reconciliation bill. So those remain in place for model years 2027 and beyond for light-duty and medium-duty vehicles and for the heavy-duty vehicles for 2030 and beyond. That's not the end of the story. We now anticipate EPA will take administrative action to repeal those, but Congress did not repeal those through the reconciliation bill. And there were a number of small changes to eligibility, timelines, definitions of commencement of construction for the tax credits that happened at the last minute in the Senate. But I won't go through those. Those are mostly on the clean energy side, solar and wind deployment side of the work. The climate subcabinet is also working on a couple of items right now that just give a quick update on. We are working on the sustainable aviation fuel focus area where we are bringing 9 climate subcabinet agencies at the state level together to talk about if a producer comes in, wants to produce sustainable aviation fuel in Minnesota, what are the likely regulatory and environmental review requirements that they will have to follow in order to have that production happen. And we're learning about the feedstocks and the additional regulatory basis that we will have for the biomass feedstocks. We're hearing a lot of interest in waste wood, particularly in northern Minnesota from the sawmills with waste wood, and also the black liquor interest in the pulp and paper manufacturing as well. So using waste materials to go into sustainable aviation fuel development. And then very timely for us now, we're also working with 9 or 10 different agencies on extreme heat guidance for the public, particularly focused on outdoor workers. People who have to work outdoors, making sure that they understand the risks and the opportunities, and also trying to target employers so that they understand what their responsibilities are to protect people who have to work outside during extreme heat events, and what the signs are and what the options are. And then we're planning some fan giveaways for the state fair, and hopefully we'll have our mascot ready for the state fair to show off as well. But we're making a push for people to really focus on understanding the risks of extreme heat as we start to see heat alerts and high heat and high humidity events in Minnesota. And along with that, we have air quality information. The Pollution Control Agency, the Department of Health have had a great deal of work over the last 5 or 6 years about the importance of understanding air quality, and particularly as we see unhealthy and dangerous air quality levels from smoke coming in from Canadian wildfires and from some wildfires that are in Minnesota. And then the final item is that on Monday, the 21st, there'll be a National Sustainable Aviation Fuel Workshop in downtown Minneapolis being hosted by the Greater MSP, which is also organizing the Minnesota SAF Hub, and myself and Commissioner Kessler will be attending that, as well as other state government officials to continue the focus on the bill opportunities for Minnesota to produce sustainable aviation fuel in Minnesota in a way that protects our environment, protects human health, protects our natural resources, and addresses this opportunity to reduce greenhouse gases from aviation sector.
Yeah, thanks for that report. A lot of good work going on at MPCA, so thanks for that comprehensive report. Questions or comments? Member Lindeke.
Can I just ask you about that mascot you mentioned? What's the story with that?
Yeah, part of the work was that we hired a contractor to help us come up with some of the marketing materials, and so I don't want to give away too much, but
I want you to give away too much.
Hopefully we will have it at the state fair, but we will have some fans that will also represent the mascot as well. So.
Okay. This is just an observation. Thinking about you making your report, traveling this weekend. For anybody going north on 94, if you have an EV and you need to stop and charge, Fergus Falls is where you want to stop for fast charging. Otter Tail Power has fast chargers right off the highway in the Perkins parking lot, and they don't charge you for the electricity. It's pretty remarkable. Anyway, do you know why Water Tail Power wouldn't be charging for fast charging?
I wouldn't know. My hypothesis would be they've received some grants from particular organizations of the federal government to put those in, and so for a time, they'll be not charging for that electricity, or perhaps they made a mistake and you just outed them.
Yeah.
So look to see why they're not charging.
They had a spot there that looked like a credit card, and you wave your card across it. I tried, nothing happened. I had, I'm not going to get it out of the plug, but no, it was free. So nobody call Otter Tail Power and tell them something's wrong with the machine. So I'm going to stop there again. All right, Member Martinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Kolash, I'm very curious about the freight switching conversion plan. I'm wondering, do you have a total dollar amount that MPCA has available for that?
Our total dollar amount is $1.4 million for that. It's a cost share program for the freight switching.
Okay, thanks.
All right, good. All right, thanks for that good report. I thought I was going to have to make a report for Carl Crimmins, but I see Bridget Reef is back here with us in the audience, so we'll ask her to come forward. She's a much better source of information than I would be. I think all we know is that you don't have to take your shoes off anymore, so
Mr.
that's a
Chair,
good
that
thing.
is correct. Mr. Chair, members, thank you. The only update that I was going to offer today is that we did get commissioners appointed after a very long anticipated wait. They will be sworn in over the next few months. Andrea Mokroth representing the Crystal area, Pamela Deal representing Anoka, and then Barrett Zemer from the Hibbing Airport. He will be one of our outstate airport representatives. And then we had 2 reappointments, James Deal and Rich Ginsburg. And then we still have one more vacancy that we're waiting to fill, which is another outstate representative. So new faces on our commission if you ever tune in or visit us at our terminal meetings.
Good. And then, did you have anything else?
Not
Okay, so I had in Carl's note here, and you can maybe talk a little bit about this, that you're starting to use something called enhanced passenger processing. In this world of transportation, we know all about acronyms and learn new ones all the time. This is the EPP, and you're using that for facial recognition on inbound U.S. passengers coming from overseas?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members, this is part of our international arrivals, way to be more efficient for folks coming in and ideally reduce wait times. So the idea is that as an incoming resident of the U.S., you would ideally just have to walk past a screen that recognizes you, and the officer would let you go by in our Minnesota way. Our CBP officers continue to want to ask questions. They're trying to get used to the process and things. But please note, if you are coming in from an international flight, and this is at both terminals, you will see a little bit different process if you are a resident here.
Yeah, that's what Carl's note too said, that they should reduce time going through customs, and there's only 12 airports in North America using this process. And
So far, yes.
We happen to be one of them. And then on the continual good news front about our airport, that you were ranked we were ranked the 4th best airport by the Washington Post for the U.S.
I had not heard that one.
Oh.
That's news to me.
All right, well, that's
We'll
good news.
take all the accolades we can get.
Yeah. All right, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Now I'll turn to Deb Barber for Met Council update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of things to report. We do have a couple of new council members. Mark Jenkins, who was on tab for District 12, which I will definitely say was a promotion. And also we have Victor Obisakin, who is representing District 15. So their first meeting was last week. Victor is joining us on Transportation Committee. So I think a much needed voice for Dakota County. So I think that will be very helpful to have him at the table there. So far so good. Last time I talked about taking Committee of the Whole on the road, and we did that. We went and had our Committee of the Whole in Chaska, and we had a great event. We had mayors and from a couple of the cities, some community representatives, and I think it was an overall really, really great event. And being the first one to roll this out, I think it was very successful. I'm looking forward to going to others all across the region. And thank you to Mayor Hubbard for participating. A couple of other quick thank yous that I want to do. First of all, I want to thank Metro Transit. They provided all of the transportation services for the Hortman Memorial event. They had a very organized operation and was able to make one thing easier for some people on that day. So I really want to recognize Metro Transit for the work that they did. It was very impressive. Also, I want to thank a number of you. Metro Transit PD also had a recent loss, and several of you reached out with condolences, and I appreciate it. I will say the loss of Lieutenant Rodriguez was significant to our organization. She was a founding member of the Homeless Action Team, and so definitely something we'll be feeling for a while, but I definitely do appreciate feeling support from all of you and the people who've reached out over time. Now I'm going to transition from sad things to a positive note. The Beeline has been operating for just over 3 weeks, or almost a month now, and but we've got 3 weeks of ridership data, and over the Route 21, which the Beeline replaced, ridership was up 23%. So we're up to almost 8,000 rides per day on that ABRT system. So again, thanks to TAB for helping to support that line because it's really, really successful even in its early days.
All right, very good. Questions for Member Barber? All right, let's turn to our colleague. Member Cashman.
Thank you so much. Beeline is really great for my part of Minneapolis. Super excited about it. Do you have any more granular data on like where the most amount of people are getting on and off?
Mr. Chair, I'm not at this point yet, but like I said, we're only 4 weeks in, so I'm sure we'll get some more details, and I can talk to our ABRT and Metro Transit operations staff to see if we can get some more details for next time we meet at TAB.
Great, thank you.
All right, let's turn to our colleague Gary Hansen now for Suburban Transit Authority update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maple Grove Transit is offering MyRide microtransit service for youth who are not yet licensed to drive to get them to events and appointments when family or friends are not able to provide transportation. And that's proving to be quite popular with parents who need to get their kids where they need to go. Maple Grove and Plymouth Metrolink are coordinating technology changes resulting from final recommendations in their joint transit needs assessment study, which will result in implementation of service changes this summer. Southwest Transit fixed route rider surveys of reasons that riders are coming back indicate primary reasons, perhaps not surprisingly, are the cost of driving and parking. Perhaps a little bit surprising, only 15% cited changed work schedules. Southwest will test automated passenger counts on buses using AI in place of manual counting, and that installation and validation are anticipated to be completed by state fair time. Minnesota Valley Transit Authority has received 2 of 4 trolley buses ordered primarily to provide special services in the area of Canterbury Park, but also for use on local routes. They are unique-looking vehicles, and they should prove to be quite popular with riders. MBTA started an outreach and marketing campaign to increase commuter express ridership called MBTA Moves Commuters. Express riders were surveyed to learn more about why they commute and what they enjoy about MBTA's express trips and what can be improved. So those are just a few tidbits that I hope are of interest.
Yeah, good report. Questions for Member Hansen? All right, good. That completes our report outs, except for Joe McPherson. I don't know, Chair McPherson, if you had a report for the TAC, or we're just going to go right into the business of the day.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. Nothing to report on TAC. I just wanted to reiterate some of the comments from earlier. So Member Sahib Jim, if you or your team or the Department of Safety have any, how-to videos or instructional videos on the new law with how motorcycles can weave through traffic, a lot of those events based on the description in the legislation are going to happen on local roads. So if any of your team members are putting together videos or anything that we can share on social media, we'd greatly appreciate that. That's all I have.
Okay, good. Just stand by. I think we're just going to take care of the minutes, and then we'll go right into the work of the day. We've got minutes from June 18, 2025.
Anderson.
No changes or additions? Okay. Move the adoption by Member Anderson.
Second.
Second Member Dole. And any further discussion? All those in favor of approval of the June 18, 2025 Transportation Advisory Board minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The June 18, 2025 minutes are approved. So we'll just go right to the items that we have to work on today, and there are two of them in the consent portion of the agenda. Chair McPherson is going to deal with those, both streamlined tip amendments. Go ahead, Chair McPherson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this first action item here, consent item, is action transmittal 2025-24. And similar to some of the action items you've seen at previous meetings, as we approach that 2026 adoption, or 2026 TIP adoption, we're still working within the 2025 TIP. So projects are being added in the 2025 TIP to ensure that if they're let early, they're acknowledged and they can move forward. So this one's very similar. This is a request from MnDOT to add a sign replacement project on Interstate 494 from Argenta Trail in Egan to Minnesota Highway 77 in Bloomington. So with that, this was unanimously approved by TAC.
Okay, and with respect to both 24 and 25, no regional money in either of these projects. And do you want to explain 25 as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Handle them on a single motion.
So the second one, very similar type situation. The one caveat I'll get to here in a minute. This one here is to add a project for signal replacements in the cities of St. Louis Park, Minnetonka, and also Maplewood. The one thing you'll note in the action item here is, in addition to adding this to the 2025 TIP, there are some significant cost increases associated with these signal projects. Recently, MnDOT did update their signal design standards for the actual infrastructure. So the mast arm and the signal pole are now a new design type. And so with that, they come at a increased cost. I do want to applaud MnDOT for the next set of program projects that are already in the TIP. MnDOT is going to pick up the tab. Maybe Connie doesn't know this yet, but Molly does. MnDOT's willing to pick up the tab on the additional costs associated with that. So typically, local agencies, the cost share on a signal system replacement is the local agency would be responsible for their legs, and then MnDOT would be responsible for the costs associated with their legs. So a typical four-way intersection, you have a city street, a county street, and then two trunk highway legs or parts to the intersection. MnDOT will get 50% of the cost, the county will get 25, and the city will get 25. In this case, the additional costs associated with that above the original estimate, MnDOT's going to pick up. In the future, though, that won't be the case. They're going to return back to the typical cost share, so that's something to know moving forward on these projects. But with that, this one was unanimously approved, just with the acknowledgement of that agreement here.
Yeah, good. Thanks for that good explanation on 25. Anybody have questions on either 2025-24 or 2025-25? Is there a motion to adopt those items in a single motion?
So moved.
Question.
Hanson moves.
Oh, he moved. Okay.
Patel seconds. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of 2025-24 and 2025-25 in a single motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Those items are adopted. And now we'll turn to the non-consent portion of the agenda. And one item here, and that is the review of the Flying Cloud Airport Long-Term Comprehensive Plan. And you're going to introduce the topic, I think, and then we've got Joe waiting here to walk us through the PowerPoint.
That's correct, Mr.
Chairman McPherson, go ahead.
Thank you. So per state statute, it requires that the Metropolitan Airports Commission submit a determination of conformance of the final draft Flying Cloud Airport, that's a mouthful, 2040 Long-Term Comprehensive Plan. That's one long acronym there. And council systems and consistency with the council policy. So here today, Joe Whiting is going to go through that plan, what they've done, some of the engagement they have, and answer any questions that you may have. This item was also supported by the TAC. So I will turn it over to Joe.
And thank you, Chair McPherson.
Thank you, Chair McPherson.
And thank you for having me here. I know we're a little bit behind, so I might run through this pretty quick. But we do have our MAC colleagues, Eric Gillis and Michelle Ross here, if there's any questions following the presentation. As Chair McPherson noted, this is something that's required under state statute, and so this requires both our local airports, so those regional airports run by the Metropolitan Airports Commission, to prepare these long-term comprehensive plans, similar to cities' long-term comprehensive plans that they need to prepare as well, and also for the Met Council to then determine as these are consistent with regional policy and conform to the regional systems. So a little bit about these long-term comprehensive plans. So as I mentioned, they are required under the aviation planning process. They are 20-year planning documents. So you see it's the 2040 long-term plan Flying Cloud. These are regularly updated as scheduled in the TPP. The previous Flying Cloud plan was developed in 2010. The update process for this began in 2021, but was delayed due to additional FAA review and a very thorough engagement process conducted by the MAC throughout. These are really used to identify needed projects on the airports, define operational parameters, so looking at those future operations for aircraft, and to assess any environmental and financial requirements associated with these needed projects at the airport. For this airport, we are still looking at the consistency with Thrive MSP 2040. So as we're aware, Imagine 2050 was adopted a few months ago, but because this plan was developed wholly under Thrive 2040, it's still being reviewed under that lens and through this process. Also, one more note, these plans are also used as basic inputs into the Transportation Policy Plan Aviation System Plan update, and the plan that we see today has been incorporated in that update that we will be bringing for public comment at our next meeting. Real quick, the airport existing conditions. So as we know, Flying Cloud is down in Eden Prairie, close to the Minnesota River. It is a primary regional reliever to MSP Airport. It sees a lot of reliever of corporate jet traffic and piston aircraft traffic. It's actually the second highest used airport in the region behind MSP with about 133,000 operations in 2021, and is one of the airports in the region that has that 5,000 foot maximum runway length on the airfield. When these processes are kicked off, the MAC likes to set goals for these plans to meet for both the system and the airport itself. And for this airport, the MAC identified enhancing airport safety, preserving and improving operational capabilities if possible for the current family of aircraft using the airport, and to promote financial sustainability for the reliever airport system and the MAC as well. So part of this, as I mentioned, was identifying those operational parameters through the planning horizon. And as you can see here, this report does include 2040 forecasts, and it's expected about 143,000 operations at the airport by 2040, which is about a 7% growth through the planning period, and about 354 based aircraft at the airport throughout by 2040 as well. A key note about these forecasts and based aircraft is that it's expected that the jet traffic at Flying Cloud will actually be one of the main sources of growth for operations and base aircraft there. And really it's because of the airport's location, being located in Eden Prairie in that southwest metro area, where you do see a lot of corporate business traffic that prefers to fly in closer to where they're based and live, rather than flying to other airports and driving that rest of that distance. And so we actually do see Flying Cloud by 2040 becoming the highest used corporate and business jet traffic airport in the region, with almost 50% of operations taking place at Flying Cloud in the region. So to meet these forecast demands, and again, those current aircraft using the airport, this plan also identifies needed improvements to the airfield and supports facilities to handle that expected load. And the overall preferred development alternative is on this screen here. And just some key aspects here to note is that all these projects here are about to be estimated to be $134 million in improvements. One key note about that is these are current dollars, so these are just measured today. So as you see these airport comprehensive plans coming through with the CIP items in the future, those costs will likely escalate as costs do escalate in the future. However, it gives you an idea of the scope of the improvements planned to meet those operational estimates for 2040. Another big aspect of long-term comprehensive plans, specifically with the reliever airports, is that noise considerations and those development of what's called the DNL, or day-night average sound level noise contours. And so at our reliever airports, these are updated with these long-term comprehensive plans. At MSP, those are updated annually. So in this one, this is what you'll see this contour outlined to 2040 and potential impacts on the neighboring area around the airport. So you can see here that the DNL levels go from 75, which is the most impact, to 60, which is it's still some impact, but it's not something that the FAA considers something that is rises the level of mitigation. And so as you can see here, the 65 DNL, which is that level the FAA considers that threshold, is still completely within airport property. That 60 DNL is really something used for planning purposes. So if you see that start to grow, you might start considering future land use changes to the surrounding areas to be more compatible, or potentially voluntary mitigation efforts at those properties. But so you can see here, almost all the noise contours by 2040 are expected to remain on airport property and not significantly impact the surrounding community. One more key point here is all the engagement that the MAC does for a lot of their comprehensive planning efforts. It's a really a thorough process that it kind of goes through many years here. And so through this process, the MAC met with multiple different stakeholders and various groups for engagement. They also, with all these plan efforts, they develop and set up what's called stakeholder advisory panels, which includes both airport tenants and also neighboring stakeholders as well. And those conducted meetings throughout the process and kind of through the process developing these preferred alternatives and understanding the operational parameters. In addition to that, these plans also go through a mandated 45-day public comment period, which passed on April 5th, and included 22 comments, with most of those mainly around aircraft noise. Final slide here is a relationship to regional policy. So as I mentioned, these long-term comprehensive plans are used as a basic input to our plans and policies, and we've are now incorporating this into that 2050 update. The relationship to the Transportation Policy Plan is it's classified as a minor airport. These proposed changes do not change that role of the airport in the regional system, so there's no impacts from that. There are no significant certain projects may require some coordination with various jurisdictions around the airport, but these are not regional in nature, and these can be handled when those happen in the future. The long-term plan addresses any required elements that are identified in the aviation system plan. And again, we're looking at that from Thrive 2040 with the policy direction to create consistent, compatible, and coordinated local comprehensive plans. This plan will then help Eden Prairie and those neighboring jurisdictions as they do their 2050 plans to update theirs in relationship to this. And then also supporting one of our major regional reliever airports with continued improvements. It really does help us advance that prosperity, income, and that economic competitiveness of the region to have such a significant reliever in the system. Real quick, just looking at the next steps here. So we're now at that Met Council review phase, so that'll go through August. We'll be going to Transportation Committee and full council in August. Following that, it goes back to the MAC for adoption, and then what they do then is then get ready for what's the next phase. This will be the environmental review phase. So every airport long-term plan is really just the first step of a longer review process, and that environmental review phase for all these identified projects will begin likely in 2027 and run through the year, maybe into 2028. So we'll get additional opportunities to kind of review the environmental impacts of any of these proposed projects in the future as well. And then after that, then it'll move on to design and construction in the CIPs. Kind of ran through that pretty fast. So if there's any questions, again, we have our MAC friends here as well, so we can certainly answer any of those if there's any of them.
Thank you, Mr. Whiting. Questions for Mr. Whiting on this matter? All right. The recommended motion from staff is that the TAB recommend that the Met Council find. Oh, excuse me. Yes, Member Bradley.
I have a quick question. Do you have any, as a part of your report, do you have any demographic data on the information that you? So you said you had a comment period of 45 days. Do you have demographic data around that? I think it was with
I believe I would punt that to our MAC friends. Do you have speak specific to the public comment received? Yes.
Thank you, Chair and members. My name is Michelle Ross. I'm the Director of Stakeholder Engagement at the Metropolitan Airports Commission. And to answer your question, unfortunately, we do not have specific demographic information about the people that provided comments, but we do know that we're residents of surrounding Eden Prairie.
So, like in the picture that you show, is that from one of the public comment period?
So Chair and members, that was from our very first Discover Flying Cloud event that we held at the airport back in 2021. And so that was, members were invited, that we sent postcards to encourage participation, but it was open to the public, so anyone could attend.
I was just wondering if you have information on, and it probably gets more, down to the weeds or whatever, on when you held those events in, like if you had several in the evening, a couple during the day, and how did you reach out to the community in order to let them know that this is an upcoming project?
Chair and members, that's a great question. Thank you. We do try and consider when people can actually come and attend. So while we did have this very first event at the airport, all subsequent events were held at Hennepin Technical Community College down in Eden Prairie. So then they're accessible by public transportation and have most of the events were in the evening to encourage participation again. So we didn't hold them during like office hours or business hours, but around the 6, 7 p.m. hour. We typically held an open house where we were available to answer questions and then had a scheduled presentation as well, and then question and answer sessions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good, thanks, Member Bradley. Anyone else? All right. The recommended motion from staff is that the TAB recommend to the Metropolitan Council that they find that the final draft Flying Cloud Airport 2040 LTCP has a multi-city impact as well as conforms to the regional systems and is consistent with regional policies. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Commissioner Gattel moves.
Second.
All right, Victor seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting the recommended motion as related to item action transmittal 2025-23, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The recommended motion is adopted. Thank you. Anything else, Chair McPherson? Free TAC?
Mr. Chair, not at this time.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on now to the informational portion of the agenda, and Connie Sahibjam is going to introduce the Easy Pass update. We've got Brad Larson with us, I think. Yeah, there's Brad. Haven't seen him for a while. Good to have you here with us.
Yep.
Member Sahibjam, go ahead.
Thank you very much. As you know, this MinPass, or we used to call it MinPass, now Easy Pass, is around 20-some years old. I'll give you like a 2-minute history of how it all started. But I think the reason we're bringing it up to this group is a couple of new members have asked. I believe Member Foster have talked about it. What is it doing for us? And so I thought it would be a good conversation to have. What it's been, where it is now, and where it's going. Back in around 2000s is when we officially, at least me in my head, and I think the department too, we declared that we can't build your way out of congestion. You can't keep adding building lanes and adding lanes because they will all fill up. So you need to be smarter about taking care of congestion. Besides, big projects cost a lot, and then they take a long time because of the politics to get delivered. And they're in the multi-hundreds of millions, and our Metro District, MnDOT, back then was 250 million. Now about 350 million is all we have, and every project we do, just 494, the first phase is $350 million. So we switched strategies to more low cost, I'll call it low cost, high benefit type projects, maybe more manageable, be more strategic in managing, putting a stint in using that analogy to kind of unclog the system and so the system can flow better and optimizing the system. In about 2005, Minnesota was part of a 4-state trip, and I was lucky to be part of that, go to Europe to learn all about managed lanes. And that's a real simple concept where you have excess capacity, you just use it, and that is shoulders, to be specific. They call it hard shoulder use over there, and it's some other states do it, and we were the first ones that do it in the United States. We did it on 35 before we did this big 35 northbound toward downtown, where during the day the shoulders just sits there as a safety feature, and then if there's congestion, it opens up with technology, and it helps relieve traffic, or for when there's incident safety situations. Using strategies like that. And then when we came back, we wanted to do that with some of our shoulders. And then we were reminded by our sister agency, the Metro Council, that we have around 250 plus miles at the time, that's what it was, I don't know what it is now, of shoulder bus on the shoulder use. And if you open things up to traffic during congestion, the buses will not have advantage. And that was a point well taken. So our compromise was, okay, we're going to price it. We can open the shoulder or a managed lane system and go with the pricing part. So transit can use it, double occupants and more, and single occupants can use it with payment. So anyway, that's just kind of how it all started. And then using that HOV lane, and we ended up going through the hot lane concepts and and doing that. I'll just say, and I'll hand it over to Brad, that it's obviously not a moneymaker. We're not in the business to make any money, and Lord knows we don't make any money, but it's a great tool to help manage congestion, provide a reliable trip for transit, for high occupants, and those who pay. So with that, I'll hand it over to Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Member Sahib. Mr. Larson, good to have you with us, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Connie. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, TAB members. Brad Larson with MnDOT's Metro District, Easy Pass Director. I think I probably have about 2 minutes left after that intro, right?
Oh, no.
No, I appreciate the background, Connie. It's a very good background to have. I think most of the members here probably fairly familiar with our Easy Pass Express Lane system here in the Twin Cities area. Easy Pass is the name of our price managed lane system that we have here in the region, or high occupancy toll lanes, hot lanes, formerly known as MnPass. The purpose of these lanes is to improve the region's transportation system by providing that faster, more reliable travel option for transit, carpoolers, and other commuters during peak periods. It's been 20 years now since the system has been in operation here in the metro area. 394 first opened in 2005. That project was primarily the conversion of an existing and underperforming high occupancy vehicle lane to a hot lane. And that quarter and the rest of the system is still operating essentially under the same concept of operation, same operational parameters as were originally put in place back in 2005. Our next facilities were implemented on 35W south of Minneapolis in 3 phases between 2009 and 2011. Our third lanes moved over to the northeast part of the metro area on 35E north of St. Paul. And our most recent lanes were put in place in 2021 on 35W north between Lina Lakes and Roseville. Our next facility, next lanes are under construction right now on 494, as most of you likely know, in that Bloomington Strip area you can see on here. And there are numerous other corridors here that you can see in this green hashed marks on the map here that are either under study or have recently been studied for managed lanes. The ones that are probably the furthest along in that study are the Rethinking I-94 between the downtowns and the 252-94 corridors, which are both in the environmental impact statement process right now and evaluating managed lane alternatives through that process. Our Easy Pass system here is also now, well, as of 2021, part of a much broader national network that encompasses essentially almost all of the toll facilities in the eastern half of the U.S. Hopefully by next year, by 2026, this map will also be including Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and Colorado will be part of this interoperable group. The facilities that exist out on the West Coast in California and Washington and Oregon, those will be coming at some point in the future, but probably not by next year. And essentially what this interoperable system allows is that if you have an Easy Pass Minnesota account and transponder tag, you can use that on any of these other facilities and then vice versa. Switching now a little bit to more to the updates. This first one on lane use can kind of show you how lane use dipped quite a bit in terms of toll trips at the beginning of the pandemic and has come back through 2024 quite significantly, much like traffic has been coming back on the system since coming out of the pandemic. I also think that you know, looking at our monthly and daily trends on the system, that 25 we would likely be getting very close to 2019 trip numbers. However, as Connie mentioned, the 394 bridge project that is going to close the reversible section between 100 and downtown will likely keep these toll trip numbers below 2019 levels here in 25 and 26. Despite the toll trips being down slightly, you can see here customer accounts have continued to remain pretty strong. People still are very interested in having this option out for their commutes. Finally, I just wanted to update you on a couple key studies that we're going to be, well, one is underway, this first one on here, this Easy Pass Systems Engineering Study that is just getting underway. It's going to be evaluating new technologies that can improve safety and performance in the lanes and also reduce violation rates in the lanes. It's primarily focused on looking at technologies, camera-based license plate tolling type technologies, video tolling type technologies, as well as automated occupancy verification technologies out there that are essentially in use on virtually every other hot lane system around the country right now. And so there's a lot of information we can look at in this study. And this study should be complete within about a year and really provide us with some good information on how to improve our system and bring us up to speed on where current technology is at. The second study that is not yet underway, this fourth generation Easy Pass system planning study, is something that is identified in the council's work program and that we're planning to partner with the council on. It's going to be similar to our previous phase 3 system planning study that was completed in 2017 in that it will evaluate and reevaluate many of the freeway corridors here in the metro area for their potential to benefit from Easy Pass lanes. But it's also going to be reassessing the goals and performance of the system, as well as looking at how the system can meet some of our newer goals, particularly in the area of greenhouse gas emissions and BMT reduction, which we're going to hear about in the next presentation here in just a few minutes, a little more. MnDOT is still trying to identify the funding for its share of this study, but hopefully we'll be able to identify that and get that study underway fairly soon. And I have to end with just our new standard ending to these presentations, our public service announcement on scams in the tolling industry. I'm sure many of you have probably received a text over the last year saying you owe a toll bill somewhere and telling you to click on a link, and hopefully you didn't do that. The bottom line is if you receive any unsolicited text, email, phone call saying you owe money, do not engage, do not click, do not respond. Well, you can respond, but do that outside of whoever's contacting you. You contact your financial institution or the organization independently that is claiming that you owe something. One good thing is that the tolling scams have kind of lessened here over the latter part of this year. And unfortunately, the criminals committing this fraud have just moved on to other industries and areas. But that is all I have, and I'll stand for any questions.
Yeah, thanks for that. Questions? Commissioner?
A couple, just on that whole phishing scam, I've gotten some of those too. I think a lot of us up here have gotten them. But you know, they seem to cycle back through those too from time to time. And so what's your outreach strategy for these phishing kind of scams to make sure that the general public, you know, get an idea of, so that they'll sign up?
Yeah, it's been very challenging. We've been working with the Minnesota IT department, their criminal fraud division. We've been working with law enforcement agencies. All tolling agencies throughout the world have been working on this and trying to get the word out as much as possible about these that these are scams that you're receiving is the best way to do it. Now, to a certain extent, the people committing this fraud have probably helped us more than anyone because they have saturated the market, so to speak, in this area. And now so many people are familiar with that these are scams. But we continue to try to get the word out through earned media, through social media, through all kinds of different banners that we put on our websites and on our account websites and that type of thing, trying to inform people to continue to watch for this. It seems like they always strike right before a holiday, you know, right before a weekend. They try to take advantage of if there's a lot of other chaotic things going on in the news media. That's when they try to strike. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
Yes, it does. And then, so just one follow-up question. On this Easy Pass for electric vehicle incentives, is it going to be renewed beyond October 21st of 2025?
Yes, our program that provides incentive, toll credits for people who purchase electric vehicles and plug-in electric vehicles. We are hoping that will continue for a third pilot term. It's been in place now for just about 6 years. It's been pretty popular, pretty successful. Probably about 70 new customers a month take advantage of one or the other of those EV discounts when they purchase a new electric vehicle or used electric vehicle or plug-in electric. Some of it might depend a little bit upon what happens at the federal level. There's a lot of questions about, in federal law, there's this provision that has enabled the administration to allow an exemption for electric vehicles on tolling facilities, and it's unclear whether the current administration will continue that exemption. If the current administration doesn't, we will have to have some discussions with FHWA about whether or not our discount program now can continue forward, or if it falls under this kind of federal preemption that might not allow it to continue forward. But we hope that it will. We think that it will, but it is just a small caveat to the program continuing. So,
thank you.
Other questions? All right, Member Lindeke.
Thank you. I've been interested in this for quite a while, especially how usage has changed post-pandemic. So that chart you showed was kind of interesting. I was also interested in the revenue, kind of like, so the price point changes, it's dynamic, right? So has the toll gone down since before COVID to after COVID? Just kind of, that's one question. And the other one was about a different kind of fraud, which is like something I notice probably obsessively is license plate fraud. So this is a big problem in the East Coast where tolling is more common. But now that Minneapolis and Mendota Heights are going to use speed cameras, I'm just interested in what efforts or how much you've noticed people modifying or putting, stuff people do is nuts. You glue leaves onto your license plate, you bend it, you paint it, all sorts of stuff to try to evade the tolling technology. Is that something you track or can tell me a little bit about?
Yeah, Commissioner member, so your first question about revenue, revenue tracks pretty close to this same trend that you see up here on toll trips. Revenue is still not coming in at the same levels as it was pre-pandemic, and we're probably getting close to about probably about 90% of pre-pandemic levels annually in revenue we're collecting on the system. Obviously, we added another new corridor during the pandemic timeframe, so that has a factor in there. As far as the license plate fraud goes, yeah, it's a very good question. It's something we want to learn more about as we do this study I mentioned, looking at camera-based license plate tolling, which they have on almost every other toll system out there in the country. You know, it's going to be something we're going to be keenly interested in. You know, what are the violation rates when it comes to new types of approaches to cover your license plate or to obscure your license plate, to camera-based video type tolling operations out there. And we don't see it a lot here because we don't rely upon the license plates for tolling. So.
Okay. Other questions for Mr. Larson? Yeah, Member Olson.
My turn. Sorry, I thought I was further down in the queue. Thank you for this presentation. Again, I'm really interested in the Easy Pass, you know, not because I ride on it, but just increasing capacity when you're thinking about not having, you know, lanes added. You know, this is a good way to get more out of what we already have there. And so maybe one request, maybe this is just send it to a lane for the Managed Lane Systems Planning Study Phase 3. I mean, I have no knowledge of it. I was talking to my alternate. We have no knowledge of it. So that'd be great to just be able to review that. And then just maybe two sort of specific questions. So one would be, you know, 394 is a different program as far as I can tell. You know, it's reversible lanes and the other ones are all just a single direction lane. So is there some reason that has not been replicated? Is there some, you know, planning piece about that, you know, it's just more expensive, or sort of what's the consideration of doing it completely differently for all the other implementations? And then maybe just more about, you know, what kind of metrics or thinking is there about, like, how effective is this program and is it doing what it's supposed to?
Yeah. First question regarding the system planning study, there's not much to review yet. We're still developing the scope of work, but scope of work might be something you'd be interested in taking a look at once we get it ready to go here in the not too distant future. As far as the reversible lanes on 394, you know, 394 was originally built in the 80s, and that reversible section were high occupancy vehicle lanes, HOV lanes. It was part of a big project back in those days, big federal project, CMAQ project for the region, being our first HOV lanes. A lot of other metropolitan regions have a lot of big, robust HOV lane systems. That was our first one. And the reversible, at the time that it was built, there was a big directional commute in that corridor, you know, into downtown in the AM, out of downtown in the PM, and hence its design, having that reversible design, having 2 extra lanes, moving in the morning downtown and out of downtown in the afternoon. It's worked very well over the years from the 80s, even though it was underperforming as an HOV lane facility. Once it converted to a hot lane facility in 2005, it was carrying a lot more people, the corridor was, and it reduced congestion in the corridor, and has performed very well in a lot of respects. That's not to say that it hasn't been without its challenges. There's been a lot of questions about particularly over the last year or so, about some of the pinch points that exist on 394, particularly the eastbound ramp that goes from 394 to eastbound I-94 is generally congested, backs up into the corridor. And so there's been a lot of questions. Should we switch the direction of the reversible, have it going eastbound all the time to try to relieve that eastbound pinch point that exists? There's also been questions about, could we've done studies over the years on can we get these lanes performing a little better through movable barriers, through changing the design to maybe a 1 and 2 type direction, permanent direction. Reversible lanes like this with gate arms that you have to operate daily, the direction daily, are pretty challenging. I would say that for the most part, they're not a design solution that gets selected much anymore on urban freeway systems. And I think that's part of why you haven't seen it happen here in this region. It's not to say that it doesn't get studied in a lot of our corridor planning studies. We do at least do an initial level evaluation of a reversible solution, particularly if you have a big directional split in traffic. But some of the challenges, the operational challenges that you have at these facilities have made it so that alternative has not moved forward in any other corridors. And we don't have any right now under study that we think that it would be replicated now.
Member Johnson, any further add-on?
Yeah, I think it was just the general effectiveness data. I think that's something that, we always want to look at. We're spending a bunch of money on something like 494 and just, how do we know it's effectively being spent? So I'm just wondering what kind of metrics are being looked at, sort of especially looking at, this type of graph where it's like we're not even back to 2019 numbers, which VMT is down maybe, maybe that's a good thing. But, what kind of metrics are being used to evaluate the Easy Pass program for success?
Yeah, good question. We just issued our 2024 annual Easy Pass report, which is available on the Easy Pass website, and which is listed here. And in that report, a lot of these performance metrics are set forth in there. Primarily, we're trying to look at increasing person throughput in these corridors, and travel time reliability during peak travel times. And so there's a lot of data in there about throughput and about travel time reliability, travel speeds, travel time reliability, those types of things. So I would encourage you to take a look at that, and that'll kind of show you. And those reports, you can go back through time and kind of see how is it performing now compared to 2019, which was the pre-pandemic reports.
Thank you.
Member Doe.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director Larson, for your presentation. And thanks for also the useful information that Texas and Oklahoma are joining. That'd be very useful for my future travels. My question is, has there been discussions with municipalities like Minneapolis or St. Paul to implement a district approach to dynamic pricing, like the congestion zone recently implemented in New York City?
Good question as well. No, we have not really had any in-depth discussions with any of the local governments about doing something like that. I'm sure Minneapolis has, and MnDOT and others are kind of watching closely what happens in New York with their congestion pricing zone, it may take a little while longer in our area given the dynamics of travel and travel behavior in this area compared to some other major metropolitan areas around the country. But I think it is something that has proven to be pretty successful around the world, where it's been in place for a few areas, more than 10 years in some areas. But I think how everything works out in New York City is really going to determine, how much future metropolitan areas look at it.
Thank you, Director.
Good. Thank you. Member Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a question about the transponders versus the license plate cameras. So to be in the Easy Pass system, you need the transponders. And do some states still have both systems going, or is that some of the questions?
Yes, most states have both the transponder account type system like we have here, plus the camera-based license plate or video tolling piece to capture the vehicles that do not have accounts and tags in them. That's about the only way you can toll those vehicles or better enforce the lanes so you don't have those violations in them.
Got it. Just a quick follow-up. This part's a comment, so thank you for that, because I was curious how you move state to state that way. But for those who don't use Easy Pass lanes, it's wonderful. It's so easy. The transponder, you can switch it back and forth as to whether you're in the car by yourself or with someone else. 494, I cannot wait for the project to be done, number one, but really also to have the Easy Pass lanes in place there is probably one of the most congested places in the metro, and it's going to make such a big difference.
So Member Barber can take her transponder with her and go to Florida in the wintertime?
That is what I heard, yes.
Sure can, yes. Yes.
All right.
And pay less. You pay less when you pay through a transponder through your Easy Pass Minnesota account than you would if you just drove in those lanes and got the toll bill in the mail from the license plate capture. So,
Even better news.
yeah.
Commissioner Karwowski's going to have the last word here.
What are the factors determining where you're expanding in these major highway systems in the metro? I'm looking at the map here on, well, it's basically the slide there. Yeah, that, if I was to put the Mississippi River, it looks like about 20% max is east of the Mississippi River and 80% is west of the Mississippi. I have no problem if, what's driving the expansion of this?
What has really driven the expansion early on, what drove it were the corridors where we had HOV lanes. So that first corridor on 394, where we had an underperforming HOV lane, this was seen as a solution to get better throughput in that corridor, which it did. After that, the 35W South lane was particularly driven because that was the only HOV lane left on our system was down on 35W. And we got a big urban partnership agreement grant from the federal government to do that project. So that's what drove those two early projects primarily. Since then, our system planning studies have been instrumental in kind of indicating where these next corridors should be. And some of the biggest factors that are looked at in those system planning studies, we look at congestion, we look at where the highest transit use is, because this is primarily a transit advantage, transit way we're trying to build here. So those are two big factors we look at. And then we kind of look at that construction opportunity. Where do we have big corridors that are going to have some big reconstruction infrastructure needs in the future? And we try to time up some of these improvements with those big projects that are occurring in those corridors. So those are kind of the three biggest factors. We're trying to steer these projects towards the highest needs in terms of congestion, transit, and where we're going to be doing work.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. And if anybody wants to sign up for Easy Pass, just use the website address and go there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Couple miles of freeway.
No, there's so much a month.
No, not anymore.
No, not anymore. We got rid of the monthly fee back in 2015. So now all it takes to sign up is you deposit $25 in your account, and that goes to your future tolls. There is no monthly charge or no one-time charge for tags or anything like that.
And then if you get an EV or a hybrid, a plug-in hybrid, you get a discount off the ingestion pricing?
For the EV, yep, you get $250 in toll credits that get applied to your account. For a plug-in electric vehicle, you get $125.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Not a question, but you've heard me say this for decades. Why don't you make it dynamic? There should never be tolling on Christmas Day when there is no rush hour traffic. And in the old days, you used to tell me that people couldn't figure out if it was on or off. I said it was the same in knowing which lane in the grocery store you could go to. Now you have signs that you literally turn on and off by the minute. You have funny little sayings. You change the dynamic pricing. I mean, your next study, you should look at having the tolling being reflective of the need, no matter what day of the week or time it is. You could have an accident, a weather event, outside a rush hour, but there's nothing more infuriating than on Christmas or whatever, and everybody's smushed over into the two lanes, and there's nothing, and some days not even any transit in that lane. We can figure this out.
Yeah, we've discussed this in the past, Commissioner, yeah, and we have looked at it, and we can look at it more in the future, for sure. And we have, so Christmas Day, it's not in operation anymore. I think we expanded our, I think it's like 6 or 7.
There is a Jesus, right?
6 or 7
There is a
major
Santa
holidays.
Claus.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So Independence Day, it was open to all, so.
Progress.
Yeah.
So as you depart, I think I got a little bit of a confession that for some reason my transponder isn't getting read by the camera. Through the I think there's some kind of coating on my windshield that precludes it from being read, so I'm wondering if I need to upgrade my transponder.
It's possible, you just let me know, Chair, we can make it so you get charged.
No.
But yes, as vehicles get more sophisticated, as windshields become more
I
sophisticated.
think I might owe you about $5.
Well, we can get together after this meeting.
Free everything for you.
All right. Thank you, Brad.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Next, we got a couple other folks from MnDOT with us. Chris Behrens and Maurice Rohrs are going to talk about the highway expansion impact assessment, greenhouse gas related. Gentlemen, thanks for being here and thanks for your patience.
Thanks, Chair, members. As you can tell by our attire, we're pretty interchangeable here, so I'm going to turn it over to Morris here.
Chair Hovland, board members, my name is Morris Rohrs. I work at MnDOT in the Office of Sustainability and Public Health. And we're presenting today on some of our work related to emissions reduction, particularly as it relates to highway expansion projects. And yes, Chris did ask me to shave my head, but I thought that was going to go a bit too far. Coordination. So just to locate you quickly inside of this information item, you've been hearing a range of kind of responsive work that various entities are doing to reduce emissions. Within the transportation sector, there are 2 big ways that we can reduce emissions: through the fuel types and through how much we travel. This presentation and the work that we're engaged in is on the travel side of things, trying to reduce vehicle miles, noting that there's a whole bunch of other work that MnDOT and other agencies are doing to change out fuel types and reduce carbon intensity. Why are we doing this work? MnDOT, as well as other state agencies, were tasked with reducing emissions. Specifically, going back in time, 2007 was when the state first set some of its emissions reduction targets. So it goes back nearly 20 years. In 2023, the legislature passed a law that was mandating that we look at the impact of highway expansion projects and set up a process around that. And at that same time, the legislature also gave a couple accountabilities to the Met Council around looking at VMT as it relates to development patterns, as well as looking at assessing transportation emissions within the MPO. And then roll ahead to 2024, the legislation was updated further, asking us to set up this technical advisory committee, which Chris and I have been working with, and which we're kind of reporting on today, and was also expanding out, looking at the portfolio of our transportation investments. What that essentially means for projects in the near term is that if there is a new highway expansion project essentially adding a half mile more of lane or a new grade separated interchange. We look at the greenhouse gas emissions coming from that, and if there are emissions that are above baseline activity, then also needing to have an offset plan that goes with that. And those two things need to happen for that project to either enter a TIP or the STIP. And in future years, we're just beginning work to now look also expanding that from projects out to a program or portfolio assessment. So in the last year, MnDOT, through our technical advisory committee, so not the TAC that supports this board, but MnDOT has an emissions legislation technical advisory committee to assist us with this process. We have developed a method for assessing whether or not a project is generating emissions, and then also developing methodologies for means by which that project can identify offsets to those emissions. And then we've been creating kind of supporting tools and procedures going along with that. And the procedure is fairly short. You identify, is it an expansion project? You use a couple of different methods to identify what are the likely additional emissions that would result from building that project. And then you look out 20 years and see if there are additional actions that you can take to offset or mitigate those emissions. And project proponents would do that a couple times during the life cycle of a project. You do that initially when the project's being scoped before it goes into a TIP. And then once you get closer to a preferred alternative, 30% design, you do a final assessment to verify that what you're actually going to build lines up with your initial intent. And the legislature identified 9, and now in this last session, 10 offset categories, things ranging from transit to land use changes to parking management as means to offset emissions. So who's responsible for assessing these projects? Generally, it's going to be MPOs, or in this case, Met Council. So Met Council, through the project proponents, would be asked to assess an expansion project and identify, again, the emissions impact as well as the offset. And then they would seek concurrence from the Met Council that they are indeed presenting a project and a plan that is meeting the requirements of legislation. Outside of MPOs, it would be generally MnDOT would be working to do that assessment. The Met Council is the first entity that would approve a project, saying that it conforms. We would use our technical advisory committee to review those and just verify that our procedures are working as they're intended. And that technical advisory committee would then provide advice to our commissioner saying, yep, this project and the TIP or STIP overall conforms with legislation. There's a graphic on the right-hand side of the screen that is the kind of members that are in our technical advisory committee. And it's worth noting that we have one of the staff members here at Met Council, Jonathan Ehrlich, I'm sure familiar to most of you. He's been a great resource in advising us and will continue to do so in the coming months and year. We were working quite hard and fast to try to satisfy the legislative requirement, which was to set up a process and procedures by, I think it was February, which we've met. But in saying that, this is a big change both for MnDOT, for regions, for the state. And so there's quite a bit of work that we're still going to be needing to do to bed this in and support it. One of the big items is coordinating with the Met Council. So while we've identified the procedures that we would use to assess emissions and offsets, we still need to do more work on logistically about how we administer that. So the legislation allows the offset plans to, they give preference to them being located in the area of the project as well as, near in time, but they have, approving entities have discretion around that. So what exactly are the procedures that the Met Council is going to want to use around that? We still need to work through that. There's also a range of different activities that are going on. MnDOT has developed a method for tracking emissions within this set of procedures. The Met Council is developing a method of satisfying their legislation around accounting for greenhouse gas emissions. MPCA is doing additional work, and so there's additional work that we need to make sure that we're aligned and simplified and not confusing to folks. This is an emerging field, and there's still a lot of work to be done, and so we're going to continually improve some of our methodologies as we get more information or have greater capacity to do work. As mentioned, the legislation directs us to move from projects to a portfolio basis, and so we're going to do that in the coming years. And then a big challenge, and this is probably one of the more substantial changes, is that the legislation is pushing us to integrate our land use decisions with transportation investment. And so that also will need to be continual work between MnDOT and Met Council. as well as other MPOs. We've been going out to groups such as TAB and to provide information on the work that we're doing, get feedback. A couple just frequent questions that we get, which projects are grandfathered in. So essentially, many projects have a long line of sight on this in terms of if you're already in the STIP, if you already have an approved layout, which projects that are near in time would, they're grandfathered in, they're not going to be caught out by this legislation, but kind of going forward, so any projects that would enter the TIP or STIP in 2027 or onwards, they would need to be complying with this. And then that steps up further for that program analysis, which projects that are programmed for 2031 and beyond need to conform with that. Where can the offsets be located and how can they be accounted for? So again, you can start, project proponents can start to count offsets from now going forward. And so if there's a transit improvement in the area that's coupled with an expansion project, that can be connected together. There is, and the legislation gives priority to offsets being localized to where the project is occurring, the transportation investment. And that makes a lot of sense. Many of these projects are large, they require a lot of different funding streams, and there will be kind of political tension if you have a transportation infrastructure investment going in one area and then an offset or a transit improvement or something else happening in another area. Most communities are going to want those together, and so there's kind of a natural preference. But in saying that, the Met Council will have kind of discretion as to how broadly they consider the area of offsets. And then I kind of already answered this question once, but it's worth repeating. So again, initially the Met Council is going to be charged with assessing whether or not projects conform with legislation. MnDOT's Technical Advisory Committee would review that and just validate that, yeah, we think that the assessment was correct. And then ultimately our commissioner agrees with that. This is evolving dynamic work. And so if yourselves have additional questions that are not appropriate for this meeting, or you have people in your community that are interested in projects that you want to get more information on, please use our contact details to reach out to us for further questions. And with that, I stand for questions.
Yeah, good, thanks. Member Martinson has one or two questions for you, way beyond the frequently asked questions.
I would not, I don't know, we'll see. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Roers and Mr. Behrens, for the presentation. This is great to see. I've been looking forward to seeing this moving forward since I've been following the legislation since 2023. My question is actually sort of, and it's one I've asked before here too. When you talk about miles traveled, you've got a parenthetical measured per capita. And while that may be appropriate for setting initial targets and allocations of greenhouse gas reductions across jurisdictions, I don't think it is the appropriate metric to be measuring reductions, because the reductions are supposed to be tagged back to what the emissions were in 2007 in the state. So this is, I bring this up whenever this is talked about, because I think that it has to be an absolute reduction in travel miles to get the absolute greenhouse gas reductions, not a relative one. And if it's per capita, that's a relative reduction. So,
Members, chair members, it's a really important question, one that we were wrestling with, because when this was set up, we are talking about a reduction with emissions in absolute terms, and a reduction on a per capita basis in a relative reduction. And this was a key area that the Technical Advisory Committee worked on to say, all right, how can you evaluate system impacts and offsets on a system-wide basis? The key kind of lens, when we heard the folks that were moving this forward, they wanted to put together something that they saw as pro-growth climate policy. That when we are expanding the highway system, that's done with important reflection on how well it's integrated with a multimodal strategy and the land use development patterns in that region. And so that's one of the reasons we have a VMT reduction target that is relative. We are looking, because we, population goes up, population goes down. What you are looking to try to see is how much are folks having to drive kind of beyond what they would actually like to do. And that's where the VMT discussion came in earnest a number of years ago in our region.
Okay, it still doesn't help me understand how we get to goal by using a relative measure of per capita.
Yeah. Chair, members, this was established before this legislation and then now applied to the legislation. Basically, what they were looking to do is say, all right, you have these emissions reduction and VMT reduction targets. How is that being applied when you're looking at the largest projects that you're thinking about doing?
All right, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Member Martinson, were you done?
Yeah,
I mean,
good.
yeah, no, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question, and I noticed not until the final slide did I see the word safety mentioned. So my question is, because you mentioned overpasses. Overpasses, what we look at as counties usually are regarding safety issues. And my question is, where is safety brought into this to figure out, this needs to be dealt with safety issue, but it's going to add something in the area of greenhouse gases. Just kind of curious as to how that works together.
I can take 7. Chair, board members. So I think that we've been trying to develop a process that isn't pitting safety against other transportation objectives. And so I don't think that we're viewing application of this, that one has to come at the expense of the other. So we would anticipate that safety considerations are met, and then we're asking for project proponents also develop balanced projects that are offsetting other needs. I don't know that is that different to the challenges that are faced in many projects. So certainly we would not anticipate that safety improvements are held up, for emissions reduction by itself. It could be taken together in balance.
Member Doe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, directors. Does MnDOT currently not integrate or have discussions with local municipalities to analyze land use context with the design of a roadway?
Chair, board members, we do, but I think that this legislation and our approach is seeking to have that more tightly integrated.
Gotcha.
And a challenge for us working with Met Council is that in some ways, some of the procedures and processes that guide land use are somewhat disconnected, or not always using the same language or timeframes that, and so we'd be working in time to have those more apparent, better connected.
I mean, I guess my follow-up question is, has there been any proposals or discussions on what that could look like? At least during my time working with the Florida DOT, they do have a land use context analysis step during the planning phase to determine the improvements of the roadway of the project. So.
Well, Chair, members, this is an opportunity to emphasize that when this legislation was crafted in 2023, there was also a number of parallel additions for the metro area around land use, around the development guide update, and making sure that there is this connection happening between transportation and land use. And so and this is kind of the points of emphasis that Morris was making about the opportunities to kind of align the strategic growth that's happening with significant transportation investments.
All right, thank you.
Chair McPherson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Technical Advisory Committee Chair for the committee. So, in regards to this, we're having a robust conversation right now about the regional solicitation process and how it's going to unfold in the future. One of those elements that we're considering right now is the possibility of adding in an interchange category. So, with that, this is a big key aspect of those types of projects. I understand how the legislation lays out and what it says about being the responsible entity, or I can't remember what the exact term is, but in the legislation, essentially the project proposer is responsible to figure out what the mitigation offsets are, how to pay for them, and then subsequently either implement them or tie them to the project. I know the TAC has been doing a lot of work. I appreciate all the work that all of you have been doing. As Molly had mentioned earlier, it's kind of like building a plane as it's taken off from the ground. You're doing that work, so applaud that. Where is the TAC at right now as far as when we start looking at these regional projects, and if it's a priority for the region, who would be responsible for those mitigation offset project. So let's say the mitigation offset is introducing a new transit line. How far or what's the connection to that to a project that's a priority for the region? So for example, Trunk Highway 65 in Blaine, we need to build another interchange. The offset that does the most impact and does the most good as far as greenhouse gas and vehicle miles traveled is concerned would be an ABRT line somewhere in the metro area. How is the committee looking at that right now? Because that's not something you dream up overnight and build tomorrow, but you really need to get this other project moving forward. Maybe just some early thought on that of how you would tie the two together and how those would interplay with each other. That's a big question a lot of us roadway engineers are looking at right now.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that. Go ahead.
Board members. So very good question. And to be honest, some of this still needs to be worked out. Would be my primary answer, like the exact method by which how we're going to tie offsets to projects is not fully known, and we need to do more work with the Met Council on that. We have some meetings coming up at a staff level to start to flesh out how we do that. In saying that, though, many projects are multifaceted, have different parts, and there are many transit projects today that MnDOT is working on that requires the cooperation of Metro Transit or other entities that they don't directly control. And so in that respect, it's not going to be a lot different in that a project proponent would need to work with communities, with transit providers, with others to develop a project proposal that the Met Council would eventually assess as being conforming with it. So it's not a perfect answer, and again, some of the very specific logistics, again, we still need to work through, but I would urge that it's not too dissimilar. Yes, some of the awesome categories are different than what we've worked with in the past, but it's not too different to the challenge of large, complex projects needing to work with multiple people and get common agreement.
Yep, follow on. Chair, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a quick follow-up, maybe comment, maybe more of a rhetorical comment. With that being said, some of these offset measures are going to be in other veins or in other modes, different funding categories. So I think that's one of the challenges ahead of us as we move forward with the regional solicitation and tying that to interchange projects is how are we going to tie these together? How is the funding going to interplay with these projects? And if you have a very valid project, it's a regional priority that needs to be built in 2029, if there's a plan to put together an ABRT line that's moving down the tracks, sorry for the pun on that, that's a bad pun. But anyways, it's moving along, but it won't be built till 2032. Can those two be tied together, and is that in the spirit and the intent of the legislation? So just more of a comment, something to...
Yeah, no, it's a good comment, and it sounds like more thought to come and more conversation to come as you work with other technical people on this.
Yeah, and Chair, board members, I might just add an additional to pad it up is that's I think partly why the legislature further amended the legislation to bring in that portfolio, because I think there's recognition that there's a benefit of looking wider than just a project. Again, the good thing is that we're talking about projects that are some years out, and so again, immediate projects should not be caught off guard, and I think we have plenty of time on upcoming projects to get a best solution.
Okay, good. Thanks for being here today. Yeah. We're at the end of the time we usually meet. We've got 3 things to do. I don't, my report's here. I already gave my report. I don't know if Chair Johnson wants to give a quick report out, and then we've got Charles Carlson, who's going to give us a quick transit funding allocation update. And I don't know, Member Johnson?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll be very quick. I gave a little bit more thorough last month presentation on this, but again, we haven't met since then. So just giving an update on what kind of major topics we're talking about, because we had the regional solicitation evaluation meeting this morning, which is now giving us better direction on how the active transportation part of that will fit into it. So one of our big questions that we have that we're going to be starting a discussion on next week at our meeting is what does the local match look like for projects? Currently, federal requirements are 20% or more, but the active transportation funds don't have any requirements. So we have a question about not just the match itself. Elaine had a really good comment about it could also be what parts of the project, design and engineering, maybe we cover that, which is not something that the federal would cover. So we have sort of a combination of things there that we want to talk about. And then also we now do have the technical work group information about minimum and maximums, some of the initial applications. So again, thinking about how the active transportation projects that are still going to be federalized versus the local, how do they differ, and what places can we be, again, much more creative or different, or just thinking about what kind of applicant pool we want. We maybe really want to emphasize smaller towns and townships. And if we do that, federal projects don't make a ton of sense because of the federalization angle to it and all the requirements. So it's really just trying to be thoughtful about those things in our next steps here. So I'll leave it at that, but I'm certainly open to any questions.
All right, thanks for that quick update. All right, Charles Carlson, thank you for being here with us today and give us this funding update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members. Acknowledging the time and my appreciation for you sticking around, I'm going to go through what is a very complicated process in a very quick fashion. And the reason for that is because we're beginning important conversation now, and that's what makes it timely today to talk about it. So thanking you for hanging around for it. This is about transit funding allocation, which is a role the council has outside of the TAB process. And the specific allocation that we're working with is that between the council and suburban transit providers, which are shown on the map here. In law, they're called replacement service municipalities. They're sometimes called suburban transit providers, although Metro Transit is a large suburban transit provider. What we're talking about is the 12 cities that the legislature gave permission to opt out of Metro Transit's predecessor system in the 1980s, back when property taxes were the main source of funding for transit. So these providers operate. 10 of the cities have formed 2 joint powers boards that operate as transit authorities. But in law and for the purpose of a lot of this conversation, those cities are kind of the legal entity for this funding. They comprise about 19% of the region's population, 12.5% of motor vehicle sales tax funding, and comprise about 4% of the transit ridership in the region. We have a funding allocation policy in place. The council updated that policy last December to establish that when we look at these funds, we should look at a long-term picture. So we established a 25-year timeline to work with. We also isolated Metro Mobility funding because in law, that program's funding is separate from the rest of the transit system. The state is now responsible as of July 1st for this program. And that has some implications for how we allocate funds elsewhere. It opens some doors that were previously closed. It points at an item from 24 years ago about how we allocate federal funds. We're proposing to change that. I'll touch on that. And then it set an interim policy for this year in how we would allocate sales tax funds. What we're doing in the policy that is in development and we've begun conversation on the elements of is we'd be incorporating new forecasts. There were some funding changes in the 2025 session that we'd be capturing, including in this. We'd be looking at how we levy some other sources of funding, whether it's regional, federal, or sales tax funds. One piece of this relates to transit capital. So this is a property levy that the council issues around the region. It's about $55 million per year. Previously, Metro Mobility relied on these funds, and that program serves a large portion of the region, including those suburban communities. For that reason, these funds could not be sort of sub-allocated to the cities for transit purposes. That is no longer the case. These funds could be sub-allocated, and that's what the council plans to do when we have the authority to issue bonds against that property tax levy. So that's a source of funding that would be sub-allocated that is until now pooled. When we talk about pooled funding, both federal and that RTC funds have historically been pooled and then allocated in the form of match into subgrants or as buses that the council owns and suburban providers use. And that creates some challenges. Pooled funding can be tricky. The shift of Metro Mobility out of this pool takes a lot of dedicated funding with it. And it really just enters a lot of potential conflict points or confusion in how we do this, compared to a new model that we're proposing that we've been in discussion with providers for around a year about, would use allocations, so the amount we levy in those cities for property, on the property tax, we would issue to those cities for that purpose. And then we would also use the full federal formula that's defined by the FTA. So rather than getting some of the factors of that formula, they would get all of the factors of that formula. So instead of pooling this fund, or these funds, providers would receive it directly. That increases the amount they would receive directly, and then the council, because funds are no longer pooled, would no longer purchase items from that pool. So that would be a change that allows greater independence, greater predictability, as well as possibility to receive those funds from the federal government directly. So that's something that we've been in discussion around. The other big piece of this, and the new information for providers this week, is about sales and use tax funds. Looking at a 25-year picture, we know, I think the pieces on this slide on the left are familiar to folks. We've talked about the split of sales tax funds between the counties and the council, the apportionment of some of those funds in law to active transportation that TAB decides. The items in right are the result of forecast analysis that we've completed, and what we're finding is that about 75% of the sales and use tax funds that are for transit purposes really replaced other funding that came from the state or came from counties in law. So about 75% is very specifically directed. Either it replaced a long-standing structural transit operating deficit that the state had been filling on a one-year basis, year over year over year. That went away completely with the state passing this new funding. It also took away the state 50% share of new transitway operations. It also took away the county's role in transitway operations. So over the next 25 years, 21% of the total sales tax, or about $4.5 billion, is relief to metropolitan counties for transitway operations. That isn't funding that would have gone to all providers. That funding goes to a regional metro system that the council operates. A component of that system is increased investment in safety and security that the legislature has specifically directed. So that is part of this program as well. So it's not to separate this as a higher priority. It's to say that sales tax funds are very specifically directed by law for these purposes, and therefore they are separate from the funds that would be allocated amongst all the providers for other things, including things like bus replacement and base operations, and things that are equal or higher priorities, especially amongst some boards, but are not specifically directed by state statute. So that's that 25%, or just under 25%, is what would be subject to allocation. So then the question before the Met Council is, on what basis should we allocate those funds? So we have three options for that allocation. One would be based on population, one would be motor vehicle sales tax, another would be ridership. On a ridership basis, for the suburban providers, it'd be around 1%, Invest would be around 3%, population would be around 4.5%. So these are three options. It's not that the council will necessarily pick one or the other, but these are three options that we've used to begin conversation. The council would receive a recommendation and then advance this in the policy. So providers would receive those funds, would use them for things like capital preservation, including bus replacement, capital expansion, matching federal competitive pursuits. There's a list of 13 items in state law that says, the council must spend at least it doesn't say how much. It says must spend on these 13 categories. One of those categories, interestingly, is active transportation. So these 12 cities would have the option of using some of the transit sales tax funds they are allocated on active transportation purposes. We'd need to figure out exactly how that might work. But that would be one of the choices available to them because it's in that list in state law for this transit funding. We'd also be working on fare collection systems, recognizing that customer transfer and interoperability of a regional system is important. We're really focused right now on a very important upgrade to our region's fare collection system. Some of this work will stretch into next year as just to make sure we don't interrupt that implementation in progress. When we put it all together, this just shows the motor vehicle sales tax or population-based distributions. These providers would receive between $90 and $97 million a year in the examples shown between current MVEST funds, which we're not proposing changes to, new assignment of federal funds, the regional capital levy, and then sales tax funds. This is, compared to what's in law right now, it specifies about 45 million of funding in one share of motor vehicle sales tax. So this is, roughly double to a little more than double what law requires in terms of the total funding from the council for these providers. So our next steps are continued conversation with transit providers. We had discussion on Monday and are preparing some follow-up information from that discussion. We shared this with our transportation committee, sharing it with TAB today. We'll be sharing it with a technical planning group on the transit side next week. We'd be incorporating public and provider input into the middle of next month and then preparing a policy recommendation for the council that they may approve in September. That allows us to prepare 2026 budgets as all providers based on a stable and reliable formula and to then begin to execute this new allocation in 2026. So with that, Mr. Chair, appreciation again for the overtime and happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thanks for that thorough presentation in such a short window of time. Appreciate it. Chair Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this is a massive amount of work that he presented in 10 minutes. So if people have questions and things, definitely reach out. I want to clarify one thing. I've heard it a couple times. I want to make sure I have it right as I'm communicating to other audiences. So right now, the way it is structured, 17% of the overall sales tax goes to counties. And at the same time, because of the redirections in law, council now is responsible for they're offloaded of $4.5 billion, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the 21.1 on the far right, that's $4.5 billion that wouldn't be coming to the council from counties. There's also another $3.5 billion that is allocated directly to counties from their 17% share of the sales tax over that 25-year period.
All right, thank you. Just want to make sure I had it right.
So, Member Barber, has the council indicated a preference on the distribution option?
Honestly, not yet. We had, this was presented at Transportation Committee on Monday. Same thing, it's a lot of information. So some people had seen it a few times, some people hadn't yet. So I think we're still kind of working through all of that. I think everybody agreed that ridership was not the right model because it was too low of a number. So I would think we picked a choice, but I think that we're definitely at least have the right information now. So this will also be going to council soon, so we'll be able to talk about it some more.
All right, okay. Member Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Charles actually acknowledged the question, my original question that I was going to ask, and that was about the 13 major funding priorities in the 23 legislation, and I was going to ask how closely were those followed. Do you feel that the allocations that are indicated reflect those priorities? I do see that there's, if my observation is correct, more than a third of the allocation is going to fill the structural deficit, whereas if you compare that farther down, the funds that are going to the suburban transit providers are less than that, and they appear to be focused on microtransit when in fact the suburban providers do have other needs that need to be addressed too. Any thoughts on that?
Sure thing, Mr. Chair, Member Hanson. That list of 13 items is a permissive list, not a comprehensive list. It's also any section of transit investment in that statute. So the things that are very prescriptive are what are isolated, and that's, the council must spend sales tax on any remaining share of busway and guideway operations. Whereas we may spend funds and have to spend at least $1 on that list of 13 items. Providers would choose from that list which their priorities are, whether it's active transportation or microtransit or electric buses or all the different things on that list. That would be tailored according to local priorities from this allocation of funding.
And if I may follow.
Yes,
Mr.
go ahead,
Chair.
follow on.
On slide 7, I noticed, I think toward the bottom, there was an example of Maple Grove with a 40%, I believe, impact in terms of this allocation. And I think you know what I'm going to say about that. Because of the scope of Maple Grove's operations, I think it has a disproportionate impact on them, and it's really not reflective on the effect that this is going to have on the suburban providers. For example, MBTA, which is the largest of the, what we're calling the suburban providers, it will impact MBTA by about 4% and Southwest by about 8%. So I want to have to understand that that's really more realistically what we're looking at rather than that 40%.
Yeah, the shift from ridership to population is not even across providers, and we've provided the providers with for each of the, for MVest and for population, a city-by-city breakout of the different sources. So those conversations continue. And changing the basis certainly changes the distribution.
Right, but yeah, Member Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make very clear that, especially when you look at the, I don't know, we called it the windsock chart. And if you look towards the right, the vast majority of stuff on the right is getting everything and how this money is being distributed in line with statute and in alignment with the law. So money's coming in, these are where we asked.
Very good. Okay, folks, thanks for sticking around for an extra 20 minutes. I don't know if you had greater flexibility on the north side of the room here or just more tenacity, but maybe it was all those county commissioners that bailed on us early over here. So thanks. We stand adjourned unless anybody has anything for the good of the order. All right, very good.